Captain Rex Murphy had been in worse situations. Not many, mind you, but definitely some. Like that time on Proxima 7 when he accidentally proposed marriage to a fungal colony, or when he convinced an entire Zephyrian battle fleet that Earth's greatest export was interpretive dance. Good times. Right now, though, sitting tied to a chair with a plasma blade humming inches from his jugular, Rex had to admit this ranked pretty high on his personal this sucks scale. The blade belonged to Kira Voss, and Kira Voss belonged to that special category of beings the universe occasionally produced just to make everyone else's lives more interesting. She was Naltharian, which meant she had 4 arms, reflexes that made cobras look sluggish, and a cultural appreciation for violence that bordered on artistic. Her reputation preceded her across 3 sectors, usually followed closely by someone's dismembered limbs. "Last words?" she asked, her voice carrying that particular blend of professional courtesy and barely contained bloodlust that made her so popular at dinner parties. Rex looked up at her with the kind of smile that had gotten him into more trouble than a drunk diplomat at a peace treaty signing. "Yeah," he said, as if she'd just asked him about the weather. "You're holding it wrong." Kira's secondary arms twitched. In Naltharian body language, this was roughly equivalent to a human doing a double take while simultaneously having an aneurysm. "Excuse me?" The blade, Rex continued helpfully, nodding toward the weapon that could currently slice through his neck like a hot knife through butter. "You're holding it wrong. Thumb goes on top, not wrapped around the grip. Better leverage that way." For a moment, the only sound in the cramped cargo hold was the steady hum of the ship's life support systems and what Rex was pretty sure was his own cardiovascular system trying to figure out if it should panic or just give up entirely. Kira stared at him. Rex had seen that look before, usually right before someone started questioning their life choices. It was the universal expression for "am I having a stroke?" or "did this person just critique my murder technique?" "You do realize," she said slowly, "that I am about to kill you." "Oh, absolutely," Rex agreed. "But if you're going to do it, might as well do it right. I mean, what if someone's watching? You don't want word getting around that Kira Voss doesn't know proper blade handling etiquette." This was Rex's problem, and had been since roughly the age of 12 when he'd convinced his teacher that homework was actually a violation of several interstellar child labor laws. He had never met a situation he couldn't make exponentially more complicated through the simple application of his mouth. Humans, as it turned out, had developed quite a reputation in the galaxy over the past few decades since making contact. Not for their wisdom, their technology, or their diplomatic skills. No, humans were known throughout civilized space for one thing: their absolutely baffling ability to make every single situation weird. Kira adjusted her grip on the blade, and Rex nodded approvingly. "There you go. See how much more natural that feels. Now you've got proper control," and Rex paused, studying her stance with the focused attention of a university professor examining a particularly interesting thesis. "Actually, your footwork could use some adjustment, too." "My footwork," Kira repeated flatly. "Yeah, you're too squared up. Leaves you vulnerable to a counterattack if your target gets loose. Which, granted, probably doesn't happen often in your line of work, but you never know when you might run into someone slippery." Otto, Rex's AI companion, chose that moment to materialize as a shimmering hologram near Rex's shoulder. Otto looked like a cross between a disco ball and an anxiety attack, which was pretty much exactly what he was. "Rex," Otto said in his perpetually worried electronic voice, "I feel I should point out that you are currently being threatened with immediate death." "I noticed, buddy. Thanks for the update. Also, our ship has been impounded, our cargo confiscated, and I am running on backup power because someone forgot to pay the electricity bill." "That someone being me." "That someone being you." "Right. Well, priorities, Otto. Right now I'm helping Ms. Voss improve her combat technique." Kira looked back and forth between Rex and his holographic companion like she was watching the galaxy's most surreal tennis match. Are you having a conversation with your AI about my assassination skills? More of a consultation, really. Otto's got access to about 14,000 combat manuals. Don't you, buddy? I do, Otto confirmed miserably. I also have access to our current legal status, which can best be described as completely screwed. The whole mess had started 3 days ago, which in Rex's experience was usually how long it took for one of his routine jobs to go spectacularly sideways. He'd been hired to transport what his client claimed was cultural artifacts from the Centauri system to a collector on Vega Prime. Simple milk run, good pay, no questions asked. Rex really should have asked questions. Turned out the cultural artifacts were actually stolen military intelligence. The collector was an undercover federal agent, and his client had been dead for 6 months. The whole thing was a setup, designed to catch whoever had been running illegal goods through that particular shipping route. Rex had walked right into it with all the situational awareness of a tourist following a definitely not a mugger into a dark alley. The thing about combat, Rex continued, apparently determined to turn his own execution into an educational experience, is that most people focus too much on the weapon and not enough on the psychology. You've got excellent intimidation presence, by the way. Really top-notch glowering. Thank you, Kira said, though it came out more like a question. But intimidation only works if your target is actually intimidated. Some people, and I'm just throwing this out there, some people might be too stupid to be properly scared. Otto's holographic form flickered with what might have been electronic embarrassment. He means himself, the AI explained helpfully. Rex is too stupid to be properly scared. I prefer optimistically oblivious, Rex corrected. You know what your real problem is? Rex continued, completely ignoring the fact that he was still tied to a chair with a weapon pointed at his throat. You're thinking about this all wrong. This isn't an execution. It's a negotiation. Kira's 4 eyes narrowed in sequence, which was her species' equivalent of slowly counting to 10. I am being paid to extract information from you and then kill you. That is not a negotiation. Everything's a negotiation if you're creative enough about it. The cargo bay door hissed open, and Commander Thax strutted in like he owned the ship, the system, and possibly the entire concept of authority itself. Thax was Rigelian, Mia, which meant he looked like someone had crossed a praying mantis with a middle manager and had then given the result an extensive collection of medals that nobody could quite remember him earning. Ah, the infamous Captain Murphy, Thax announced, his voice carrying the kind of theatrical pomposity that suggested he practiced his entrances in front of a mirror. How delightfully ordinary you appear. Thanks, Rex said. I work hard to maintain my averageness. It's trickier than you'd think. Thax circled Rex's chair with the predatory grace of a creature that had watched too many Villain of the Week performances. Do you know why you're here, Captain? Well, I was hoping it was for my sparkling personality and roguish good looks, but I'm starting to suspect it might be related to that cargo container full of what I'm now guessing wasn't actually antique pottery. Military intelligence, Thax said with the kind of dramatic pause that demanded a thunderclap. Specifically, tactical information about human combat doctrine. Rex blinked. Human combat doctrine? Don't play innocent with me, Captain. The files you were carrying contained detailed analysis of human military strategy, psychological warfare techniques, and Thax consulted a datapad with 4 of his 6 hands, something called the art of war. Oh, that, Rex said, relief flooding his voice. Yeah, that's not military intelligence. Then what is it? Rex grinned. It's a cookbook. The silence that followed was the kind of silence that usually preceded either enlightenment or explosions. Kira looked at Thax. Thax looked at Kira. Otto looked at everyone and made a sound like a computer trying to sneeze. A cookbook, Thax repeated slowly. Yeah, The Art of War, a culinary journey through human cuisine. Great book. Really gets into the philosophical aspects of food preparation. Like how the best strategy for cooking a perfect roast is to know your enemy, which in this case is the meat. Thax's compound eyes bulged. You're telling me that the classified intelligence we intercepted is recipes? Well, yeah, although some of those recipes are pretty classified. My grandmother would probably kill me if she knew I was sharing her secret barbecue sauce formula with aliens. Kira lowered her blade slightly. What kind of barbecue sauce requires military-grade encryption? You'd be surprised. Humans take their food very seriously. We've had wars over less. Wars over food? Thax's voice cracked slightly. Oh, absolutely. The Great Cola Wars of 2157, the Pineapple Pizza Rebellion, the infamous Taco Tuesday Massacre. Rex shook his head sadly. Dark times. Really makes you appreciate the simple things in life, like not being tied to a chair. Otto materialized more solidly, his holographic form stabilizing as ship's power was redirected to his systems. Rex, I should mention that while you've been conducting this impromptu comedy show, I've been analyzing our captor's ship systems. Find anything interesting? Their security protocols are approximately 37 years out of date. Their navigation system hasn't been updated since the Galactic Standard Calendar switched to metric time, and their life support system is held together with what appears to be genuine optimism. Thax sputtered. That's impossible. This is a state-of-the-art bounty hunting vessel. Sir, Otto said with the polite tone AIs used when delivering devastating news, your ship is held together with space duct tape and prayer. I've seen more sophisticated technology in human toasters. Rex had been working on his restraints since the moment he'd sat down, but using a technique he'd learned from a Terran escape artist who'd taught him that the secret to getting out of anything was to make sure people were looking somewhere else while you did it. Right now, everyone was looking at Otto, who had begun displaying holographic schematics of the ship's various failing systems like a mechanic delivering the worst possible diagnosis. Your primary life support has a 63% chance of catastrophic failure within the next 4 hours, Otto continued cheerfully. Your artificial gravity generator is running on what I can only describe as hope and momentum, and your hyperdrive is apparently held in place by a substance that my analysis suggests is either advanced polymer gel or very old chewing gum. That's impossible. Thax shrieked. I'm afraid not, sir. I'm currently accessing your maintenance logs, and I have to say, your definition of routine upkeep is rather creative. Did you know that percussive maintenance is not actually a recognized repair technique in any galactic engineering manual? Kira was staring at her employer with the kind of expression usually reserved for people who had just discovered their life savings had been invested in a company that sold ice to penguins. Thax, please tell me you didn't hire me to work on a ship that's going to explode. It's not going to explode. Thax protested. Probably. Probably? Rex interjected helpfully. That's not really the kind of word you want to hear when discussing explosive decompression in the vacuum of space. The restraints around his wrists finally gave way, thanks to a combination of the knots being tied by someone who clearly skipped that day in Bounty Hunter Academy and Rex's extensive experience with getting out of things he shouldn't have gotten into in the first place. Otto, Rex said casually, how's our ship looking? The Murphy's Law is currently impounded in Docking Bay 7, but I've been remotely accessing her systems. She's in much better condition than our current accommodations. Can you get her ready for a quick departure? Already working on it, Rex. Though I should point out that technically, stealing a ship while imprisoned on another ship could be considered either very clever or very stupid. Why not both? Kira was still processing the revelation that her employer had hired her to work on what was essentially a flying death trap held together by wishful thinking. Thax, how long has this ship been making that grinding noise? What grinding noise? As if summoned by his words, a metallic screech echoed through the cargo bay, followed by a series of thuds that sounded distinctly like important things falling off other important things. That grinding noise, Kira said. Rex stood up, stretching his arms and rolling his shoulders like he'd just finished a particularly satisfying yoga session rather than escaping from what had been intended as his final chair. "You know, this has been fun, but I think it might be time for me to make a graceful exit." Thax spun around, all 6 arms flailing. When did you? "Oh, about 10 minutes ago. I've just been waiting for a good moment. Turns out the best time to escape is when everyone's distracted by catastrophic system failures." The ship shuddered, and somewhere in the distance, an alarm began blaring with the kind of urgent tone that suggested immediate action was required to prevent everyone from becoming very small, very scattered pieces of organic matter floating through the cosmos. "Otto," Rex called out, "please tell me that alarm doesn't mean what I think it means." "I'm afraid it means exactly what you think it means, Rex. Also several things you probably haven't thought of yet, but will be thinking of very soon." The ship lurched violently to starboard, which would have been merely inconvenient if it hadn't been accompanied by the sound of something large and expensive detaching itself from something else large and presumably important. "Otto," Rex called out, grabbing onto the nearest support beam as artificial gravity decided to take a brief vacation. "Status report." "Well, the good news is that I've successfully accessed the Murphy's Law and she's ready for immediate departure. The bad news is that this ship's structural integrity has just dropped to what I can only describe as optimistically theoretical." Kira had drawn her blade again, but this time she was looking at Thax instead of Rex. "You hired me to work on a ship that's actively disintegrating." "It's not disintegrating," Thax protested, just as a section of wall panel fell off and clattered to the floor. "It's experiencing rapid unplanned deconstruction." "That's literally the definition of disintegrating," Rex shouted over the growing cacophony of failing systems and increasingly urgent alarms. The cargo bay door, apparently deciding that it had had enough of being attached to the rest of the ship, began sliding open without anyone asking it to. Through the growing gap, Rex could see the docking bay where the Murphy's Law sat waiting, her engines already warming up thanks to Otto's remote piloting. "Okay, new plan," Rex announced, as a shower of sparks rained down from an overhead conduit that had clearly given up on conducting electricity in any organized fashion. "Everyone who wants to not die in the next few minutes, follow me." He sprinted toward the malfunctioning door, which was now opening and closing with the rhythm of a very large, a very mechanical mouth that couldn't make up its mind about whether it wanted to eat anything. Kira hesitated for exactly 2 seconds before following him, apparently deciding that whatever Rex was planning had to be better than staying on a ship that was falling apart faster than a cheap suit in a rainstorm. Thax, meanwhile, was frantically pushing buttons on a control panel, apparently under the impression that random button pressing was a valid response to catastrophic system failure. "Wait," he called out. "I can fix this. I just need to reroute the primary power coupling through the secondary O." The O came right about the time he accidentally activated the escape pod ejection sequence. There was a brief moment where Thax looked surprised, then confused, then mildly alarmed, and then he was gone, shot out into space in a pod that immediately began broadcasting a distress signal in 17 languages, most of which roughly translated to "Help, I've made a terrible mistake." "Did he just?" Kira began. "Yep," Rex confirmed, timing his jump through the spasming cargo door. "And honestly, given his track record, he's probably safer out there." They made it through the door just as it decided to close permanently, sealing itself with a grinding sound that suggested it would not be opening again without the assistance of heavy explosives or divine intervention. The Murphy's Law's cargo ramp was already lowering as they approached, and Rex felt that familiar surge of affection for his ship that he always experienced when she rescued him from his own poor life choices. "Welcome aboard the Murphy's Law," he called out to Kira as they ran up the ramp. "She's not much to look at, but she's got it where it counts." Is that a quote from something? Probably. I quote a lot of things. Most of them inappropriately. The ship lifted off just as the bounty hunter vessel behind them experienced what engineers would later describe as a rapid energy redistribution event, and everyone else would describe as a really big explosion. As they cleared the docking bay, Rex dropped into the pilot's seat and looked over at Kira, who was strapping herself into the co-pilot's chair with the practiced efficiency of someone who had clearly been in similar situations before. "So," he said conversationally, "want a job?" 3 weeks later, Rex stood in front of a classroom filled with some of the most dangerous beings in the galaxy, all of whom were taking notes with the focused attention of students who had just discovered that the final exam was worth 90% of their grade. "The thing you have to understand about humans," he was saying, gesturing at a holographic display that showed a tactical scenario involving what appeared to be a three-way conflict between a military convoy, a group of insurgents, and a herd of very confused livestock, "is that we don't follow our own rules." In the front row, a Zephyrian battle commander raised one of her 12 tentacles. "But Captain Murphy, if humans don't follow their own tactical doctrines, how do you coordinate military operations?" "That's the beautiful part," Rex replied. "We don't coordinate, we improvise. And improvisation, my friends, is chaos in a uniform." Kira, who was sitting in the back of the classroom with her arms crossed and an expression that suggested she still couldn't quite believe this was her life now, spoke up. "Rex, maybe you should explain why that's actually effective instead of just making it sound like humans are glorified disaster monkeys." "Hey, disaster monkeys with really good reflexes," Rex corrected. "There's a difference." The classroom was part of what Earth's diplomatic corps optimistically called the Interspecies Cultural Exchange Program, and what everyone else called that place where they teach aliens to think like humans, which is either the best idea anyone's ever had or the beginning of the end for galactic civilization. Rex had been recruited for the program after his encounter with Kira had been analyzed by Earth's Military Intelligence Division, who had apparently decided that anyone who could talk their way out of an execution by critiquing their executioner's technique was exactly the kind of person they wanted, representing humanity to the rest of the galaxy. "The key principle of human tactics," Rex continued, "is that if you can't predict what you're going to do next, your enemy certainly can't either." A Naltharian in the second row raised 2 of her 4 hands. "But doesn't that make you equally unpredictable to your allies?" "Absolutely. That's why human military doctrine includes extensive training in what we call adaptive confusion management." Otto materialized next to the holographic display, looking as worried as ever. "Rex, I should point out that adaptive confusion management is not actually a real military term." "It is now, buddy. I just made it official." Kira stood up from her chair in the back. "What Rex is trying to say, in his typically roundabout way, is that humans have turned unpredictability into a strategic advantage. Instead of trying to eliminate chaos from their tactics, they've learned to use it as a weapon." "Exactly." Rex beamed at her like a proud teacher whose student had just grasped a particularly difficult concept. "See, this is why I recruited her. Kira gets it." "I didn't have much choice," Kira muttered. "It was either join your insane cultural exchange program or go back to working for people who think percussive maintenance is a valid engineering technique." The Zephyrian raised her tentacle again. "So the secret to understanding human tactics is to not try to understand them?" "Now you're getting it," Rex confirmed. "The moment you think you've figured out what a human is going to do, they'll do something completely different, usually involving explosions or interpretive dance." "Sometimes both," Kira added helpfully. Rex checked the chronometer on the wall. "All right, class dismissed. Your assignment for next week is to read chapters 12 through 15 of The Art of War. And yes, before anyone asks, that's the cookbook, not the military manual. We're going to discuss the tactical applications of proper seasoning techniques." As the students filed out, chattering among themselves in a dozen different languages about the bizarre species they were supposed to be learning to work with, Kira walked up to Rex's desk. "You know," she said, When you offered me this job, I thought you were just trying to avoid getting killed. I was, Rex admitted. But it turns out, the best way to avoid getting killed by dangerous aliens is to convince them that working with you is more interesting than working against you. And teaching them to think like humans accomplishes that. Rex grinned. Kira, have you met any humans who think like humans? She considered this for a moment. Point taken. Otto flickered into visibility between them. Rex, I've been analyzing the graduation statistics for this program, and I have to say, the results are rather concerning. Concerning how? Well, Ngornawa. 97% of our graduates have reported that their tactical effectiveness has improved dramatically since learning to incorporate human-style improvisation into their standard operating procedures. That sounds like a good thing, Otto. Yes, but they've also reported a 300% increase in what they describe as hilariously improbable mission outcomes. Rex and Kira looked at each other. So what you're saying, Kira said slowly, is that we're teaching the galaxy's most dangerous beings to be more like Rex. That appears to be an accurate assessment, Otto confirmed. They stood there for a moment, contemplating the implications of a universe filled with tactically unpredictable aliens who had learned to turn chaos into a strategic advantage. Well, Rex said finally, this should be interesting. And somewhere in the back of his electronic consciousness, Otto began updating his calculations for the probability of galactic civilization surviving the next decade. The results were not encouraging, but they were definitely going to be entertaining.